Hey Kate, I heard you're living with your grandma. How's that been? Well, here, let me tell you.
할머니.
잤냐?
네. 할머니는요?
조금 잤어.
왜요?
그래. 어쩌면 좀 자고 어쩌면 못 자고.
근데 확실히 운동하시면 더 주무시는 것 같아요. 오늘 나가실 것 같아요?
바람이 오늘 조용하네.
그러네요. 오늘 바람은
어저께는 아침에도 불었는데.
그쵸?
점심 먹고 봐야지.
네.
걸 수만 있으면 걸어야 돼 내가.
맞아요.
쌀나면.
생존을 위해. 저는 아침밥 먹겠습니다. 네.
I just went outside for a little bit and it's actually so cold that it's not even funny. We're having a really cold front here in Seoul and it's kind of miserable. Every time I come back from going outside, I just feel like tired all the time. I don't know if this is normal for the winter girlies, let me know. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you guys about sort of how I made the decision to move here and live with my grandma and sort of the story leading up to it, how I ended up here basically. So starting with some important background info, I was born in Korea and I moved to the US when I was 4. I lived in Austin, Texas for most of my life. My immediate family still lived there. And I ended up moving away for college. I went to Princeton in New Jersey. So that was sort of my first experience living far away from home. And the story sort of starts in college because the COVID pandemic hit around the end of my freshman year. And when they decided that classes would be online for most of my sophomore year, I ended up taking a gap year. And so I was at home working, doing internships, spending time with my family, whatever. But if you guys remember around that time, 2020, 2021, Korea was doing much better in terms of COVID than most other countries in the world, to be honest. There weren't any crazy huge spikes and they managed it very well. Life went on much more quote unquote as normal here than it did in the US or in other parts where people were self-isolating a lot of the time. Whereas I would say in Korea, a lot of restaurants were open, a lot of spaces were open, whatever. It was just like mass classes all the time. And so basically for that reason, I ended up coming to Korea for around 5 months during my gap. And that was when I lived with my grandparents in this house for the first time. Honestly, it was really lovely. It was obviously much easier to sort of like get around in terms of COVID because I just felt a lot safer here because everyone was masked and like generally the government worked a lot harder to keep COVID down, etc. And I also got to know the city quite well, and I spent a lot of time with my family, specifically my grandparents, and I got quite close to them. So that was all in all just a really meaningful summer and a really good time. And then two sort of big things happened the next year, which is number one, my grandfather passed away, and so my grandma lived here alone afterwards. And then number two, I started Korean to English translation, literary translation, and so that kind of became a big part of what I wanted to do in the future and a real passion and interest that I wanted to cultivate. And so right around when I wanted to sort of decide what I was going to do post-grad, you know, during my senior year, I was sort of checking in with my grandma as well to see how she was doing. And I think, to be honest, it was a lonely period in life for her as well. And for me, I've always wanted to live abroad at some point in my life, and Seoul just seemed like a really natural place to do it. I'm very familiar with the language, with the city. I have some friends here and family, obviously, and then it's also related to my career. And so I decided to move here, and I was thinking of looking for my own place or a joint place with my boyfriend. But then my parents and my boyfriend actually told me, you know, what about living with your grandma? She has extra space, you know, in her house. So I thought about it. I decided yes, and I moved in here late August of last year. And in some ways, it's a very fortunate situation and also a really easy decision. I'm really lucky that I don't have to pay rent in an extremely expensive city in the world. I also get a lot of great company with my grandma. I definitely feel safer because she's here, and I'm treated to so much delicious home-cooked food that I think is honestly one of the best things about living here. But in the spirit of sort of sharing what I've learned through this process, you know, it wasn't the easiest transition in the beginning. If you guys have been following me for a while, you'll know that I was lucky enough in college to mostly live in singles, and so I haven't really had that much roommate experience. And I realize it sounds kind of funny because I'm talking about my grandma, but it is, you know, she is a roommate. We are living together, and I think it's just that experience of like matching a routine with someone, when you eat, when you wake up, all that kind of stuff, sort of like the daily rituals that you have. For example, she goes on like daily walks and stuff, and I started to do that with her in the fall because I realized it was sort of like a really good space to have some quality time and also get some exercise in. But also keep in mind, I mostly grew up away from my grandparents, and I'm sure a lot of sort of like immigrant kids can relate, but they were always sort of like fantasy people a little bit. I don't think I really got to see the ups and downs of their daily life until I lived with them that summer in 2021, but also especially my grandma until now. So I think it's all part of sort of like understanding her as a person and realizing that she is a person and not just like some mythical, you know, figure from a different generation with like infinite wisdom, which I mean, she does have a lot of wisdom, but I think she also has her quirks, her preferences. And especially in a country like Korea where so much has changed in like the last 60, 70 years, every generation has had a drastically different experience and therefore drastically different values. And then on top of that, I grew up in the US, so you can't even imagine how different the language, the way I think, you know, etc. is. And so it's sort of bridging that gap as well that has been difficult at times, but also really meaningful. You know, for example, my grandma lived through Japanese occupation. She lived through the Korean War. She lived through multiple dictatorships. And honestly, all those things seemed extremely far away to me until like, you know, 2 months ago when the president of Korea declared military law. That was the first time I was like, oh, this is like actually a real thing that can happen. At 23, my biggest priorities are like getting my career somewhere, trying to get the show on the road, trying to turn my passions into something profitable, and also eating good food, decorating my room, seeing my friends. These are genuinely a lot of thoughts I have, you know, day to day, which I'm obviously very lucky to be in this position. But, you know, at exactly my age, she was going to be married soon, would have to sort of take care of a household eventually, and have a lot more responsibilities at a lot younger age than I ever will. And at some point, we can't even fathom how different our lives have been and will be. But I think that's why living together has been sort of really meaningful in that way, because it constantly makes both of us consider like what the other is going through or has been through and learn from that, and also adjust our expectations and standards to that. Especially being young, I think it's really easy to feel like our generation is always right. Like we are the most modern and most forward-thinking generation that has ever existed, and everyone that came before us has their own prejudices, But I'm honestly learning that so many things are subjective. For example, my grandma is of a generation where most people were in arranged marriages in Korea. And as someone who isn't of that generation at all in the US or in Korea, it seems very strange and sort of like something that I would really struggle with. But my grandma was recently telling me about sort of like how people still like dated, and it was kind of like a scandal. And you try to make sure that none of your family members knew, etc., etc. And it's just like a small moment like that where it's like, oh, of course, people were still people. It's not like a crazy different time. Like they found their own ways to be with people they loved, etc. And that's just a really small example, but it's like little things like that that help me see a different generation as less people who are like incredibly close-minded and traditional and unhelpful, etc., but also that they've just lived with a different set of expectations and that they made do in their own sort of human ways within those expectations. And those were like the exciting rebellions, and those were sort of like how they were pushing the boundaries at the time. And I feel like that's really cool to hear about. Some other small things I've learned is like the importance of home cooked food and all the genuine like knowledge that has been passed down for generations that goes into food. I don't hate cooking, but I definitely don't love it. But seeing my grandma sort of cook her food and show me the knowledge that she has in that department, I think it's been really inspiring and reminding me that we are what we eat, but not in like a toxic way, and more just like you can feed yourself to kind of have strength, to feel good and clean and healthy, and like you're getting a bunch of different nutrients and just like well balanced, etc. And also if you're cold, you eat hot food. If you're hot, you eat cold food, whatever, like simple things like that. But if you integrate that into your daily routine, this food truly becomes the basis with which, like the energy with which you can live your life. And I think that has been a really positive sort of learning. Definitely care more, I think, about actually cooking from raw ingredients, cooking from scratch now than I did in the past. A really fun thing is that I've learned a lot about my family and my parents through this experience, so I would definitely recommend spending some time with your grandparents or other members of your family if you want to understand your parents better or just yourself better even through that. I think that has been really enlightening, like seeing old photos, hearing kind of old stories from my uncles and aunts and things like that. All of that stuff that I sort of didn't necessarily get as much in childhood, I think has been also really nice to hear. And honestly, the biggest thing that I felt throughout this experience is that I'm learning how to coexist and live with other people, not just my grandma, but we live in a house with multiple families. We live in a neighborhood that still has sort of like the older style residential community that a lot of Seoul neighborhoods are losing due to redevelopment. I think I finally began to understand what it means to sort of care for each other. If we need to fix something in this house, I'll try to do it, then my uncle or a different family member will try to do it, or the people from the house downstairs will try to do it. It becomes a community effort in a way. So does making kimchi, which we did last fall, which sort of became like we shared the ingredients a little bit. And even the fact that I just recognize all the ladies sort of the stores nearby, and they just kind of feel like community members and not people working at like really big chains. Obviously this is partially because of where I live and the neighborhood in which I live, which is also they're trying to redevelop it anyway, so it's not going to be very permanent. But I do think, at least for now, it has been such a special experience to learn what it means to sacrifice a little bit of yourself, whether that be your time, your energy, your effort to help someone else. And that might just be keeping them company, like me and my grandma. That might be making them food. That might be trying to help them with something related to their house or their business. That is sort of what sustains this community, and that's what sustained my grandma throughout her life. And if any of you guys are like me and you're from Western countries, particularly the US, you'll be familiar with how individualism is sort of placed on a pedestal there. And especially more and more with Gen Z, we want like these third spaces, we want sort of community, but also so many people are talking about, why would I pick up my friend from the airport? That's ridiculous. Like, anyone is asking too much of me, I need to protect my peace, etc. And I do think, there's sometimes a truth. It's obviously case by case in these situations, but I think that the knowledge that I've been fed that you should be fine on your own, and if you're not, there's something inherently wrong with you, is just so wild. Like, I've just come to realize that that is not true. I don't think we're meant to be alone. I don't think we thrive when we are alone. I actually think we thrive when we do rely on each other. And it has to be mutual, right? It has to be sustainable. But I think that's been part of the challenge. That's been part of what I've learned, is that sometimes I have to give my time. Sometimes I have to stop what I am doing to help my grandma or to help our neighbors. Sometimes I'll be asked to do sort of like familial duties that I don't actually want to do. And obviously there's a balance there as well, while I'm still, sort of an individualist at heart because that's the way I was raised, I still take a lot of value in like personal freedom and growth, but I think that it's been so nice to pair that with also community, making sure people are taken care of because they are taking care of me. And I'm still at the beginning of learning a lot of this. I think my grandma has lived this for a lot of her life, and so that's what I just really admire, and I'm trying to learn from her as well. I kind of observe her as she sort of interacts with the people around her, but it's a knowledge I definitely want to take into the rest of my life. I think it's made me appreciate human relationships to a new level, even my long distance friendships and people that are just special to me. I think knowing that I want to devote a little bit more energy there. And yeah, it's really something no book or class or maybe even YouTube video can teach, but I just think that's the most important thing I've learned through this whole thing is sort of to reconsider what I thought was an ideal life, which was living alone in my 20s in a big city, kind of making a name for myself, which there are elements of that I still want to do, but now I have learned to see a lot of value in just being able to show up for other people and to be able to spend time with other people, especially your family, which is not something that a lot of 20-somethings are told to do in the US post-grad, but yet that has been where most of my growth has been in the past year. The last thing I want to say on this topic, and then I'll give you guys a really quick tour of my room, is that also coming from like a mindset and this like culture of thinking of a lot of things in a cost-benefit analysis way, basically being like, if I put in this much work, how much will this be able to get out for me in my life? For example, how long will this career last? How long will this relationship or this friendship last? If I put in X amount of effort into making this place my home, that means I'll be able to be comfortable for X amount of years, whatever. I think I'm more faced with the impermanence of things that I'm devoting myself to now more than ever. My grandma is quite old and she's very healthy right now, which is amazing. But obviously people don't live forever. And like I mentioned, this neighborhood and this house that I'm coming to sort of love and call my home is up for redevelopment, although I'm not really sure when that will happen. By the way, for those who aren't familiar with like the Korean redevelopment cycle, basically they're trying to turn a lot of Seoul from this to this. Huge apartment complexes where no one really talks to each other, which is fine. People really want that and it's very valuable for the real estate market, whatever. But having lived in this, I will say that there's definitely more of a residential community, and at least I've been really enjoying it. It's been very nice, calming. It doesn't feel like skyscrapers in the middle of nowhere, which I really appreciate. Slight rant over, but there's just an element of like I'm spending so much time with a person in a place that will one day for sure disappear, and that one day will be sooner rather than later than a lot of other people and a lot of other places in my life. And obviously I don't think about this on the day-to-day or like honestly very often, but I do think that is constantly forcing me to become more comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen in life, not kidding myself that things won't change. And I think that's making me really appreciate this time and all these moments that I have, as well as sort of questioning the idea of investing in your life. Like things do not always have to be an investment. If we only got close to people who would be there for us for all of our lives, for the rest of our lives, that would be an incredibly small pool of people and a lot of experiences and a lot of connections lost. And same with places and same with items and also experiences even maybe. And I think coming out of college, where all people seem to be concerned about were investing in a good career, in a good education, in a good future, etc., which are important things, but I do think those are sort of bogging me down from appreciating just my daily life. I think that's been sort of the biggest gift that this time has given me, the ability to appreciate life in its impermanence, and also sort of to start giving up the idea of living a life solely because it looks impressive to others, which I think is always hard to do. Anyways, thank you guys for listening, and I guess I'll end with a little room tour. Okay, so I'll keep this short, but I just wanted to show you guys what I've done with this spare room in my grandma's house. All of the big furniture, including this bed, was stuff that was here already, but I've just added my own touch through a bit of decor. First, we have my bed, which actually has my sheets from college on it, as well as an extra blanket because it's pretty cold in here for the winter. Then I have my bedside table and lamp that I got from IKEA, and I love the color of this table so much. It goes really well with the shades of my room, and I usually just have a bunch of books stacked here. And then you'll see this throughout my room, but I have a couple of prints up here that I've collected over the years. And then above my bed, I have a poster from a cafe called YM Espresso Room here that I really like. This mirror was also here as well, and just to make it feel a little bit more like mine, I've added some postcards and stickers to it. And honestly, it's sort of a fun personal touch that I would recommend. And then if you go past my bed, we have sort of this bookshelf area that has a lot of random stuff organized. I put a small blue rug here that I really like just to kind of make it feel like a cozy corner. At the top, I have like an aroma oil diffuser, a nice lamp, and my mirror that I use for just getting ready, as well as all my jewelry like necklaces and earrings and stuff. The next row is mostly like beauty and skincare. So I have a box for hair accessories and scrunchies, a box for makeup, and then a box for skincare and like lotion. Then we have my tiny book collection. I'm afraid that this will keep growing and I'll have to find some more space and rearrange some things, but so far it's pretty small. And on the other side, I have sort of like my tech gear, aka camera stuff, whatever, charging cords, and some pills and like supplements that I take regularly, as well as an amazing vintage film camera that I discovered from my mom's old collection last year. And so I've been keeping that out just as a reminder to use it. And honestly, the bottom row is more medications, more storage, like hair dryer, not that exciting. Then we have my desk, and one of the best things I've done with this room is turn my desk so it's facing the window. It used to be facing the other wall, and it was just like really uninspiring, and I didn't want to spend any time at my desk. But now that it's facing a window, I find that I spend a lot of time here, and I find it very comforting. Again, this desk was already here, and it's really great, but it has no organization at all. And so I just have this tiny bin that contains my essentials, like stationery, and then some decor. I have a cup for my pens and some like sticky notes that I reach for occasionally. I also have this new heating pad for like your hands while you're working that my friend just got me because I was mentioning that I was really cold while working at my laptop, which is so nice. Near my desk, I also have some prints up, as well as a personalized family calendar that my family gave me this Christmas. And then we have this tiny nook that brings me so much joy every single day, which is sort of my tea corner. I've put up little things that remind me of tea or drinking coffee here. And then I have my teapot from For Life, which I absolutely love and I use every day. Above my desk, I also have a really cool Poeta poster. This one is from Florence, Italy. And then further on that same wall, I have a little collection of prints again. I tried to match them by color, and I really enjoy sort of playing with that. And lastly, on the back of my door, I kind of created this 3-hook system for my favorite tote bags, and I really like this both in a decor way and also in the grab a tote bag before you leave way. And yeah, that's my room. She's small but mighty, and I feel so lucky to sort of have my own space in this city, my own space in this house. And I'm excited to keep making videos for you guys in this room. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it was sort of on a different topic, but hopefully you guys found it sort of interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've had a similar experience or any questions. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!